We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. By the time you hear this, it will be Friday. However, I'm in the middle of a Substack Live. So, we're going to be talking to people live on Substack here. And I always enjoy doing this. Gives me a chance to just kind of do stuff on my own. I'm here, you're here. We get a chance to interact and talk about some of the bullshit that's going on in this country with our government and such. And there's plenty of stuff to talk about. Always plenty of stuff to talk about. And I'm always very grateful for people who show up these Substack Lives. I don't give you any forewarning. I don't promote it or anything because I'm kind of lazy. I just flick it on and we see who shows up. And there's always a bunch of people that shows up. Now, the important thing about this, I've said this before, I'll say it again. In order for this to work and not just me ranting on, I need you to interact. I want some comments, some questions. Give me your perspective on things. Spacer says, hello. Hey, Spacer. Spacer's always here. I don't know what Spacer's doing. It's like every time I do a live, whether it be here or TikTok, Spacer shows up. Spacer, you need a fucking hobby. Apparently this is your hobby. But I'm always grateful when you show up because you always ask some great questions and have some great points of view. That's the interesting thing, especially on Substack. We have a lot of smart people out there, people that are of a like mind. And that's why it's good to be able to have a conversation about what's going on and hopefully try to make some sense of it. I was particularly excited to hear the news today out of California. Think about how fast this all happened. Now, yesterday, the legislature in Texas voted to approve the redistricting bill to gerrymander the fuck out of Texas, something that is already gerrymandered to the hilt. But they wanted to redistrict it again because Donald Trump wanted 5 extra seats. Probably isn't going to help them much. What's going to happen in 2026 is going to be more drastic than 5 seats. It could be significant. Anyway, they went through some bullshit. We got the Democrats who left the state, forced them to not have a quorum. Then they come back, they have another special session, and they pass this thing. And the funny thing about it is these Republicans are very proud of themselves, even though this is very unethical. They're very proud of themselves because, once again, they own the libtards. But then Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, basically said, hold my beer, motherfucker. We're going to redistrict in California, too. Then all the Republicans were screaming and crying, oh, it's not fair. It's hurting our democracy. Like you give a shit. You're just not used to Democrats pushing back. And what we're seeing out of California and Governor Newsom particularly is something we haven't normally seen. Normally, the Republicans do whatever they want. The Democrats just sit back and say, well, that's not very nice, and then let them do it. Not this time around. Gavin Newsom decides he's going to redistrict the state of California, gain 5 Democratic seats, and essentially canceling out what Texas did. Cool idea. But how do you get that done? How do you get it done fairly, and how do you get it done quickly? Well, as it turns out, once the Republicans realized that Gavin Newsom was serious about this shit, once they believed he was serious about this, well, then they said they did what they always do. Oh, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to try to delay this. We're going to try to do that. Now, they were very upset about the Democrats trying to delay their vote, but apparently it's okay on when they do that to the Democrats. Well, they filed a lawsuit, went up to the California Supreme Court. California Supreme Court basically said, fuck yourself. Now, they get to do what they're wanting to do. They're doing it legitimately and legally, so fuck yourself. Now they're really upset about this. They're screaming and crying and yelling. They wanted to own the libtards, but they're the ones whining. But here's what's cool about it. You still had another step. You had to get this concept through the legislature. The legislature had to vote on whether there would be a special election so that they could give the people the choice to vote on whether to redistrict on a temporary basis or not. Well, they got it to the legislature today. And the legislature passed it. It went to Gavin Newsom's desk. He signed it, so there was going to be a special election in early November as to whether or not to redistrict the state. Now, the question is, will they do that? Well, it's a very blue state. And most of those people hate Donald Trump, and they hate what Texas is doing. So I would think the redistricting will probably happen. And all this hubbub, all this bullshit down in Texas will be for naught because they may gain 5, but the Republicans are going to lose 5 in California. Now, they may go on to other states, but of course, Democrats will do the same thing. They're going to spend all this time fucking around. They're going to do all these things and gain nothing from it. But that's not surprising. You know, Republicans tend to fuck up. They fuck up all the time. Now, I did hear there was some talk coming out of the legislature that people in Texas maybe better start stocking up on food and stuff and warm clothing because the legislature, while they spent all this time on redistricting, they weren't able to come up with the funding for the basic things Texans need with the oncoming winter. So that's what your government does for you. They do what they think is best for themselves, and they tell the people, the constituents, to fuck themselves. Spacer says, I wish Newsom would have got more seats because Ohio is looking to erase 2 seats in Ohio. Ohio is off year redistricting, and it's unfavorable. But after hearing Eric, I understand for Democrats not to spread themselves too thin. Yeah, there is definitely something to be said about that. And again, the other thing is you've got to consider all of what's going on. You've got the economy. Everything's going to shit. Everything the Republicans do is going badly. So maybe even some of these red areas are going to go blue because of the disaster that the Republican Party has been at this point. I mean, if you've got Republicans in power and you can't afford groceries or you can't heat your house or your kids can't go to the school they want to go to, who are you going to blame? The only people you can blame are Republicans. You may see a lot of independents and maybe even some Republicans leaving the MAGA side of things. Hey, Mike, UJ here in California. I support Governor Newsom's Prop 50, but the real question is how do you make enough Republicans see reason and get them to realize the orange shit mouse is a psychopath? That's a good question. You know, these things we talk about with Donald Trump and his failures and the Republican Party and what they're doing to the people of this country, people like you and me and everybody else listening knew about this 3-4 years ago. The Republicans refused to believe it. And I've come to the realization with Eric and some other people and an old soul that the only way these people are going to learn, not until they burn the fucking house down, not until they're truly suffering. And then they're going to go, what the fuck happened? It's unfortunate. I mean, we've got an epidemic of stupid in this country, and there is no cure for it. You can sit and argue or explain to Trump-fucks, but they'll never grasp it. They don't want to. Okay. Rose says, will that help in the midterm? Yeah, the midterms will be helped by Democrats canceling out the redistricting in Texas, and of course, what Republicans are doing to this country right now. That's going to help in the midterms too. Some people think as many as 40 seats will flip to the Democratic side. So even if Donald Trump gets 5 or 2 or 3 here, it probably isn't going to be enough. Spacer says Sherrod Brown is running against again in Ohio. I hope people in Ohio wake up next year. Yeah, Sherrod Brown had been a senator for a long time. He was voted out. Now the question is, are they happy with what they've got? My guess is they probably aren't. And Sherrod Brown is going to be a safe bet. So I think he's got a chance. UJ says they're in too deep to admit it. Yeah, I think that's some part of it. I think a lot of these people are so weak that they can't admit they're wrong. They're going to continually say they're right until they can't speak anymore after they've gone off the cliff or whatever the fuck they do. I think you're right. They're in too deep. I'd said about 2 years ago that if you're going to stand with Donald Trump, you better pick the right time to leave because even after he starts to fail and after he is going to be gone, if you stayed too long, that stink, literally and figuratively, of Donald Trump is going to hang with you for the rest of your life. And if you happen to be a young man like, say, Marco Rubio, who maybe had a future in politics, when Donald Trump is done, his future is done. Because no matter who runs against him, Donald Trump will become a pariah. And anybody who runs against him will say, well, little Marco was Donnie's best girlfriend. So it's going to be a problem. A lot of these people have waited too long, and I'm not sure why it is. If it's fear of Donald Trump or something along those lines, I guess it could be, but who knows? Thoughts on the state senator from Maine, Senator Martin, sending letters to elected officials in Western provinces to coax them to become the 51st state. Governor from Maine trying to mend a relationship with Canada, only that hold on. Hold on. Let me read this again because I'm not sure I understand it. Thoughts on the state senator from Maine, Senator Martin, sending letters to elected officials in Western provinces of Canada to coax them become the 51st state. Governor from Maine trying to mend relationships with Canada, only to have dipshit break it more. You could learn more from Charlie Angus on the Guard the Leaf. Yeah, I didn't know there was a state senator trying to encourage Canada to become the 51st state. I think that's kind of ridiculous, kind of silly. I mean, here's a guy that has no power, and he's trying to get Donald Trump's attention by convincing Canada to be the 51st state. It's not going to happen. They've said it before. They said, we don't need that shit. Fuck yourself. But this just goes to show the kind of people we have in politics. We have people that aren't too bright, people that aren't thinking of the best interest of the country. Rose says, also, what a show, but he put on in D.C. among the troops today. Yeah, I didn't see that. I'd be interested to find more information about that. You got the troops in D.C., and he said he was going to be out on the streets at that point. I haven't heard anything about it if he actually showed up. He was also going to be at the Capitol on January 6th, too, and didn't show up. But anytime Donald Trump is out there in the wide open and potentially in danger, I'm in. There's a young woman running in Chicago's congressional district, and she recently called out James Carville for calling out Newsom. These old parts need to back down. Carville looks like a skeleton anyway. Yeah, I'm not. If Carville is calling out Gavin Newsom, fuck him. He doesn't understand what's going on. He may know all about politics back in the 90s with Bill Clinton, but we're in a different world right now. We're in a fucking different world, and we've got to fight a different fight. And it seems like the only person that knows how to do that is Gavin Newsom. It's fucking ridiculous. I mean, we're sitting here and we've got people on Fox News, Newsom, and some other people, Joe Scarborough, talking about how embarrassing it is what Gavin Newsom is doing. Yeah, that's the point, motherfucker. It is stupid and embarrassing. And Gavin Newsom is simply mocking Donald Trump for the very thing he's doing. Don't you find it curious that you're trying to shame Gavin Newsom, but you've never said a thing to Donald Trump, and he's been doing it for fucking 10 years? Excuse me, your argument isn't well received here, whether it's James Carville or not. What people have to understand is Gavin Newsom isn't trying to win the presidency here. He understands the first job. The first job is to cut the head off the snake. Take Donald Trump out of the equation. That's what you got to do. You can convict him 34 times. You can catch him red-handed with classified documents. You could shame him with his assaulting of women, and that doesn't seem to do anything. The one thing that does something, embarrass that motherfucker. Take him down mentally. And Gavin Newsom understands that. Now, if that's distasteful for Carville or any of these other people, fuck you. Get out of the game. You don't know how this game is being played. We're in a different world now. And if you don't fight the fight that's in front of you, you're going to fucking get your ass kicked. At least Gavin Newsom knows that. Jillian Marie, I'm tired of the Republican hypocrisy. It's okay for them to ram through the redistricting in Texas, but they say it's unethical for Newsom to let people vote on it. Yeah, I mean, it's total hypocrisy. It's the same hypocrisy when they stopped Barack Obama from putting in a Supreme Court justice because it was too late in the term. And then when they got the chance, they did the exact same thing that that the Democrats were doing, and they pushed it through. That's a perfect example. That Supreme Court thing. Obama tried to do it. Mitch McConnell shut him down. But when the Republicans did it, they just let him do it. If for 10 years you've just taken the high road and let the Republicans do what they want, and it hasn't worked, does it make sense to change your fucking plan? Well, that's what Gavin Newsom's doing. And I hope against hope that there are some other Democrats, younger Democrats in the party that will take up the reins and do the same thing that Gavin Newsom is doing. We've got to destroy Donald Trump. And when I say that, I don't mean mortally, I mean mentally. He's unbalanced mentally. He's unhealthy mentally. Once we get in his head and he starts to spiral, he'll take care of taking himself out. See, there are 3 provinces in Canada who are MAGA maples who would be interested in joining MAGA America. They're losers like Polyev trying to weasel back into parliament. Yeah, Polyev, he's a fucking Trumpian clown. And if there's 3 people that want to be the 51st state, I got to tell you, you better fucking hurry up because Donald Trump and Republicans and MAGA, they ain't going to be around for much longer. By the time you would work a deal out like that, we'd be back to Democratic rule and then see how you like that shit. He thinks it's just going to blow over and Democrats should just sit back and let it happen. Fuck him. I agree. I don't think, in this stage of politics, the idea of just riding it out and being nice, that's not the way to do it. It just doesn't work. Like I say, we're dealing in a different parallel universe. It's not like it used to be. This isn't Joe Biden's government, Joe Biden's politics, or people of that age. This is a little more down and dirty. And at some point, you have to get down and dirty. Do you think this gerrymandering in Texas will encourage Texans to rise up in terms of voting next year? I can't imagine they're happy. Yeah, you got to wonder. I mean, Texas is a whole different deal. There are times when you think Texas would go blue or vote out a senator, and they don't. Yeah, but then of course you've got Paxton as the attorney general stealing votes and cheating. It's hard to say what will go on, but I have to believe that when constituents start to suffer, whether it be the grid, whether it be food, whether it be flooding, and they know that the Republicans are running the show, you would assume logic and common sense would tell you that they need to make a change. I hope that's true. But again, we're dealing with very stupid people in terms of Republicans, so I don't honestly know. Republicans are rules for thee, but not for me, absolutely. Um, Pam, do you think our Governor Walz here in Minnesota will join in with other blue states in redistricting? I don't know. I would hope that Republicans would see this was no point in doing it. A lot of time and money spent not for no results. Governor Walz, it's weird about Governor Walz. I haven't heard much from him lately. There's some talk as to whether or not he's going to run for governor again. And if he doesn't run for governor, what does that mean? Might he try to run for president? Well, he could. I mean, he was pretty popular when he was running with Kamala Harris, but he needs to pick up some steam because Gavin Newsom and Pritzker are way ahead of him at this point. Let's see here. Boomer, do you really think that we can get rid of Donald Trump? And I've watched a couple of shows on the Nazis and he mimics Hitler. Please help me understand. Yeah. Yeah, we will get rid of Donald Trump. One of a couple of ways. First of all, The guy's not healthy. He's not looking good. He's got a lot of pressure on him. He's probably in the early or mid stages of dementia. His body is failing on him. You notice? You notice, like, when he gets off the plane, he's not buttoning up his coat anymore. His coat's wide open. He can't get his hands to work to close the coat. I think physically, he's in trouble. Emotionally, he's in trouble. And if in the 2026 midterms, the Republicans get wiped out in the Senate and in the House, he's going to be of no value to the Republicans anymore, and they may very well get rid of him. I think Governor Walz will have a harder time with redistricting. The Democratic majority in Minnesota legislature is thin. Um, yeah, I think you're probably right. If I was to take a gut reaction, I would say they would probably not redistrict in Minnesota. I don't know if that does a lot of good just to Minnesota. I don't know what we could do to have much impact. Will's in the house. You all know Will from the Rational Boomer podcast and from his TikToks and YouTubes. Hey, Will, what's up? Thanks for joining us. I know Will will have some input. Um, let's see here. Jillian Marie says there's genuine concern about Vance because he's being groomed by the Heritage Foundation, but I like to think it won't go as planned because he's so unpopular. Yeah, a lot of people say that. They say, well, even if Donald Trump goes, J.D. Vance is worse. No, he's not. Now, he may have similar ideology. He may not have dementia. He may be smarter than Donald Trump, but that's not saying much. But the problem with J.D. Vance is he's weak as shit. The MAGA folks don't even like J.D. Vance at this point. They're not a fan of J.D. Vance because he's a weak, wimpy motherfucker. He's a lazy motherfucker. Let me give you one situation where he will not be as powerful as Donald Trump. When they're trying to pass bills in the House or the Senate, and it's close or they're losing, Donald Trump gets on the phone and somehow coerces people to vote his way. People bend a knee and fall in line for Donald Trump. Do you really think they're going to do that for Gavin Newsom? Especially if they think it's going to work against them in their own elections? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. And the thing about it is let's worry about J.D. Vance as a problem when he's a problem. The biggest problem is the dumpster fire that is Donald Trump. If we can get that out of the way, we're ahead of the game a little, and then we can focus on J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance has all kinds of problems. What do you make of the fears people that Trump may send ICE or law enforcement to voting locations? We're talking 2026. We're talking a year from now. A lot can happen between now and then. ICE hasn't really done well in certain places where there have been pushback. I'm not really worried about that now. It's not something we need to worry about until we get closer to elections. But even if we were close to an election, I'm not as worried about that because people are coming out in full force. The protests are big, even though the mainstream media isn't reporting it. I'm not worried about that yet because it's not a problem we have to deal with as yet. Wilfredo says, hi, insanity. Trump is walking the streets of D.C. Now, Will, I will tell you this. I'm all for Donald Trump spending a lot of time walking in the open. I'm all for that. Let him walk in the open. I didn't see the video or anything of it, so I don't know what happened there, but I'm curious of anybody's input to see what that dumb fuck looked like walking through the streets of Washington, D.C. with his thugs around him. All right, moving on. Wilfredo, you mean JD? I may have misspoke. I'm not sure. Um, and you know what's interesting? The reason Donald Trump is walking the streets of Washington D.C. is the reason he's doing all these other things. He is absolutely desperate to get some good press. He's absolutely desperate to get some good press, and everything he's doing is coming back bad for him. His his polling is down to like 37 or 38%, the lowest of any any president in history at this point in their terms. And he knows it, even though he will tell us he's got the highest polling ever. It's bullshit. It's a lie. Will says, did you see Joe Scarborough act today? Honestly, I don't watch Joe Scarborough. However, I know what you're talking about. Joe was kind of shaming Gavin Newsom. This is why Joe doesn't have any ratings, and this is why Joe is probably going to be out of a job. As we know, MSNBC is spinning off or the parent company is spinning off MSNBC. They're going to be on their own. They're going to be independent. They're going to be called MS Now. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what they do when they're independent, when they don't have higher ups telling them what to do. If they decide to go for the right side of history, I don't know. They may fuck it up. They may still fuck it up. Joe Scarborough and his wife Mika, they're an absolute waste to watch since the election, and since they bent the knee to Donald Trump, they're an absolute waste of time. There's no value in listening to them. Johnny Vincent says, Russia-Ukraine war, Russia tank seen with Russian flag flown with American flag next to it. Also, Russian bombs, something America owns. Yeah, that was an interesting thing, and it's something we didn't see in the media that much, which is curious. Donald Trump's best girlfriend, Vladimir Putin, he wants to broker some peace between Putin and Zelensky in the Ukraine-Russia war. Not going very well. He will not gain peace there because Vladimir Putin does not want to end the war. And every time Donald Trump talks fondly of Vladimir Putin, guess what happens? That night, there's a bombing in Ukraine, basically spitting in Donald Trump's face. And last night, it got even worse because not only did they do massive bombing with drones and cruise missiles, blowing up a lot of shit, they also blew up a American-owned company, electronics production place. Blew it up. Now, this is in a remote area, so they knew exactly what they were hitting. And this is what Vladimir Putin's doing. He's doing the same thing Donald Trump does. They push the envelope, and they push the envelopes just to see how far they can go. And that's what Vladimir Putin's doing. He's laughing at Donald Trump. He thinks he's a joke. They sit in this meeting. He pretty much controls the meeting, and Donald Trump just bends over and kisses Vladimir's ass. This is who representing us now. And so they go bomb an American company. And if you turn on mainstream media, you don't see much of it because, these places are run and owned by oligarchs. But we really have to take a look at it. Donald Trump talks about security in this country. Yet Tulsi Gabbard is in the process of firing 40% of her intelligence agency. Tulsi Gabbard, who has been accused of being a Russian asset. It really seems like Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and America, by way of Republicans, is really bending a knee to Russia, and that puts us in a very dangerous situation. Here's the deal. They keep pushing the envelope. Ultimately, there's going to be some kind of disaster. Unfortunately, there'll be some kind of disaster, and it's going to be interesting to see how Donald Trump responds to it. I know how the country will respond to it, but Donald Trump, he'll implode because he will realize at that point that he's been played by Vladimir Putin. UJ says he's probably stumbling around D.C. with ice trying to catch all the Pokemon. Yeah, probably. Rose says Joe Rogan is now turning on Trump in reference to immigration and the Epstein files. What do you think about that? Joe Rogan is obviously very popular, has a big podcast and all of that stuff. I remember seeing him when he first came out and he was on news radio. He just seemed like a goofy fucking comedian. And then when he was a comedian, wasn't that great a comedian. He wasn't one of the top comedians, so he does the podcast and it explodes. One of the few times I've ever listened to Joe Rogan, he was being questioned on something he said. And Joe responded by saying, look, man, don't take me too seriously. I'm just a dumbass. And I agree with that. Joe's a dumbass. He'll jump on anything that he thinks is going to benefit him in terms of viewers. It took him a long while. I mean, it was easy to jump on the Trump train, and now he's seeing what's going on, and his sensibilities is suggesting, well, that's fucked up. Well, you knew it was fucked up before, but now it's becoming more popular to talk against Donald Trump because you know he's going over the fucking cliff. Yeah, I don't think much of Joe Rogan. I wouldn't listen to him for anything. Michael Catlett, a Miami federal judge, orders the closure and demolition of the Trump's alligator Alcatraz. I'd heard that it was just parts of it, not the whole thing. I may be wrong with that. But this is the point. Donald Trump can do a lot of things with executive order, but that's not law. Congress will have to approve a lot of these things, and some of these things are just flat out illegal, and the judges will push back. No doubt he will probably try to appeal it, but ultimately it is illegal, and even a Supreme Court that's corrupt can't even go that far astray from the Constitution. Spacer says, I think authoritarianism is coming to a slow, painful end. Trump is spiraling. Orban is losing. Netanyahu will collapse without his coalition. People are waking up all over. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. This authoritarianism, cool story, bro, but it can't last. That's the thing about Donald Trump and what's going on here. The only thing that keeps me waking up in the morning is that I know this can't sustain itself. It's going to crash and burn at some point. A lot of people will probably get hurt by that. But unfortunately, because of the way people voted on November 5th, this is the way it's going to have to be. It's sad to say that somebody was asking me earlier, when do you think the Trump-fucks will finally get it? Unfortunately, based on the conversations I've had with Trump-fucks, they're not going to get it until they're dragging themselves out of a pile of rubble and burning embers, and they're in pain. That's when they'll finally fucking get it. Rose says, I believe that Gabbard and Trump are both compromised by Putin. I do too, but I think in different ways. Tulsi Gabbard is smart enough to know what she's doing. She's become complicit, and she's working with the Russians. Donald Trump is an asset to Russia, but kind of inadvertently. Donald Trump's not smart enough to do any kind of plan or strategy. He's not smart enough for that. So what Russia and Vladimir Putin specifically have figured out is that they can play him. They can manipulate him. And they've clearly done that very well. So Donald Trump may be a Russian asset, and he may not even be smart enough to realize it as yet. Let's see here. Spacer says, did you see Cuomo hired a MAGA influencer for his meme campaign against Mondami? When he sees this thing that is tanking him, he doubles down. Yeah, Cuomo's a criminal. He's a creep. He lost the primary, but he can't own up to the fact that he fucking lost. So he's going to keep running, and he'll side with anybody that he thinks is going to help him. So he's going to go with MAGA. Really, Cuomo? Are you going to do that in New York? One of the places that Donald Trump is least popular is in New York. And you're so desperate that you're going to go with MAGA and hope that he's going to help you. Cuomo's not going to win shit. He doesn't have a chance. Yeah, he's gone all in for Trump because he's got nothing left. You know, he ended up having to leave in shame. And he was the governor of the state. He had to leave in shame. And now he thinks he can just run for mayor of New York. Sorry, that's not going to work. And then we've got Eric Adams, who is the current mayor of New York City, who also is a criminal, who was also let off the hook by Donald Trump. And then just the other day, we hear that one of Eric Adams' aides was handing off money to a journalist. I don't even know what the fuck that was about. It wasn't a huge amount of money. It was about $300-400. But what's that fucking about? And could you be a little smoother about it and not get caught? Cuomo is irrelevant and too old. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this goes back to what I've said before. There is no more room for old white men. We don't need more old white men. We've had our share of old white men, and they fuck things up. So let's get the younger people in there. Let them determine their own destiny. And we old people can just sit back and said, we fucking tried. Let the younger people decide what they're going to be dealing with in the future. Leslie says, crook for sure, but why don't the Dems really back Mondami? When you say the Dems, I don't know that you're talking about voters. I think you're talking about politicians. I'll tell you why they don't support Mondami. In Congress, everything members of Congress do is about money, meaning how much money they can put in their pocket. There are lobbyists and big PACs that come out there and give these people money in order to save their situations, like medical. Make sure we don't get universal health care, so feed money into Congress so they vote the right way. That's part of it. Now, with Mondami, it's a much different situation. Well, it's not a different situation. It's an identical situation, but in different areas. Mondami is Muslim. And there is another lobbyist or PAC called AIPAC. Now, AIPAC is supposedly there to support Israel. Okay. And AIPAC gives everybody money, not just Republicans, but Democrats too. And the idea that a Muslim might win the mayoral election in New York is troubling to AIPAC or the politicians of Israel. If you say anything against Israel, you're automatically anti-Semitic. Well, I have no problem with Israel. I have a lot of problems with Israel's government because of what Netanyahu is doing. But this is why members of Congress and the Democratic side aren't supporting Mondami, because they're getting paid from AIPAC and they don't want them to support Mondami. It has nothing to do whether he's good or not, whether he can win or not. It has to do with AIPAC feeding them money and telling them don't do that. That's the unfortunate thing. This is who's controlling our Congress, not we, the voters. It's the people with the money. AIPAC in this situation, but it's not just them. Spacer says, I saw Mondami's coalition is contemplating a primary challenge for Jeffries. I hope they do it. I do too. You know, Hakeem Jeffries, when he first came out, I was really excited about him. I thought he had a lot of potential. Seemed like a strong guy, seemed pretty articulate, was ready to fight. But Hakeem Jeffries is in the pocket of AIPAC too, and in the pocket of all the old people in Congress. And here's what we know. The old people in Congress, they're fucking it up. We need to get rid of them. And Hakeem's young enough to do this, but he's too tied up with the old folks and the money. And he can sound whatever way he wants, but if he's in it for the money and not to win, fuck him. He should get primaried. Honestly, if the Democrats win the House, if the Democrats win the House of Representatives, I would hope they'd come up with a better Speaker of the House than Hakeem Jeffries. He has the potential. He's good enough, but he's compromised. So he's not good enough for what we need. Leslie says, agree, Netanyahu does not really stand for the Jewish people, just saving his ass. You're absolutely right. That's why, you know, when you call out Israel, people want to say you're anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't care what people's religion or color or anything is. I don't really give a fuck. If you're good people, I like you. If you're bad people, I don't like you. And you don't get a pass because you happen to be in a different religion or a different color. If you're a dick, you're a dick. I don't like you. But what's going on in Israel is pretty much the same thing as we've got here. We don't like what Israel's doing because of Netanyahu. There's a lot of people that hate America right now, but we, the people, are not bad people. It's our fucking government. It's Donald Trump. So we've got to place the blame and the anger in the right place. It's not the people of Israel. I have nothing against the people of Israel. I do have a lot of problems with a leader who's trying to perpetuate war so he doesn't go to jail for his war crime. And that's exactly what he's doing. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's that much different with Vladimir Putin either. Vladimir Putin's gotten weaker. The country is struggling. If Vladimir Putin doesn't have a war, then he could get pushed out and end up in jail too because he's been indicted for war crimes. We got bad people running countries, bad people running good countries. And when I say Russia's a good country, my guess is that the people of Russia are fine people. They want all the same things we want. It's the leadership that's a problem. Russia, Israel, and America, not to mention some other areas where we have um, somebody says they lost audio. Is your microphone muted? I know. I don't have the mute button that I know of. Can you all still hear me? Netanyahu's facing statewide protest in Israel. Even his far-right coalition is abandoning him. The war is the last string that's keeping him from accountability. That's exactly right. That's what's keeping him. That is what's keeping him uh, free at this point. The war ends. He's in trouble. UJ says, Speaker Jamie Raskin. I like that one. Or Speaker Garcia. Either one of those two guys would be wonderful. They would do the job, and they're strong, and they're articulate, and they know what we have to do in dealing with the Republicans. They understand the job here. I don't think Hakeem Jeffries does. I don't think any of the old folks do. Now, Jamie's not a real young guy, but he's not an old man, say like Grassley or anything like that. So, yeah, I think those are good choices. I think they're absolutely great choices. Rose says, sorry, I have so many questions tonight. I love getting your point of view on what's going on with this sick administration. What do you think about Smithsonian expedition issue? Can Trump legally change the museums? First of all, Rose, don't ever apologize for asking too many questions. I'll be honest, without folks like you, this gets real fucking boring real quick. I get tired of hearing myself talk sometimes, especially if I have nobody to interact with. So by all means, keep asking a lot of questions. Yeah, the Smithsonian thing is really weird. He wants to change history. You know, he doesn't like the fact that we might suggest that slavery might have been a bad thing. Well, he doesn't want anything to be said bad about America. Well, we've gone through some shit in America, some bad things, and we should know the bad things as well as the good things. Is it legal? I doubt it's legal. That doesn't mean it's not going to stop, that he's going to stop from doing it. But what may happen is when he's done, which is hopefully soon, it may go back. It will go back, no doubt. Or he'll be stopped by courts or something like that. The whole point makes no sense. We got an economy that's sinking. We got two wars going on that he said he would fix. We've got deportations. We got people suffering in cages, and he's worried about the Smithsonian. That tells you what kind of fuck he is. Venezuela is gearing up for war against USA. Anti-war president. Yeah, right. Yeah, Venezuela. They're a big threat. Maxwell Frost should be uplifted also. He should be in leadership. I agree. He's a young man. He has a future, and he should be allowed to determine what his future and his peers' future are. Pam says, I can hear. Leslie says, I can hear. Good. The audio is back. I didn't know the audio left. I mean, I'm all hooked up here like I was normally hooked up. It shouldn't be a problem, but you don't think TikTok out over here is fucking with me here too, do you? Trump doesn't care if it's illegal. You're absolutely right. Donald Trump doesn't think anything he does is illegal. And if he does, he doesn't care. He's just going to do it. Like I said, he loves to push the envelope to see how far he can go. And unfortunately, up to this point, the Democrats have proved he can go almost as far as he wants. It's not until Gavin Newsom and some others that we're finally getting some pushback. Spacer says, and I bet if Venezuela tries to free quotations Puerto Rico, Trump wouldn't care. Yeah, hell, Donald Trump doesn't even know that Puerto Rico was part of this country. Remember the hurricane? He didn't even know it was part of this country. If somebody from Puerto Rico is in this country, he probably tried to deport them, even though they're citizens of this country. Pam says, I think it's people's internet cutting out, not your microphone. Well, hopefully everybody's internet's going to be fine and the microphone will be fine. Um, but, we can only do what we can do. This is the one thing I do like about Substack, though. I can sit here and talk about the things we talk about. I can say the words that we need to say. On TikTok these days, I got a note from somebody who works along with TikTok, and they said, well, when you're on TikTok, just don't talk about elections. Don't say the name Epstein. What? These are important news stories, and TikTok doesn't want us talking about them. Oh, fuck TikTok. I'm going to keep doing what I do on TikTok until I can't do it anymore. But if I'm not doing it there, I'll be doing it here on YouTube, on Spotify, whatever. They're not going to shut me up. We're just not going to play that game. I'm not going to bend a knee, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. This is why we have problems now. Donald Trump is a bully, and the only way bullies win is if you bend to them. The only way you beat a bully is to slap the fucking taste out of their mouth and push them back. We've got media outlets, we've got colleges, we've got law firms. They're all bending the knee to Donald Trump. And guess what? When this is all over, they are going to be fucking embarrassed. And that people should call them out for it when that happens. Spacer says, I wanted to add Russia has a long history of special interests, the czars, the communists, and now Putin. The people of Russia have long been suppressed. Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I've had occasion to know some Russian people who have come to live over here, and they're fine people, just like everybody else. Yeah, there's been a lot of suppression in Russia for a long time. And personally, I'd like to see them free too. It'd be nice if they got a real Democratic Party there, and they got treated the way they should be treated. Donald Trump is trying to emulate Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, Donald Trump is a fuck-up, and he will continue to fuck up. That's the saving grace we have here. All these things that Donald Trump is trying to do to create an authoritarian government, it could be much scarier and much worse if there was somebody competent trying to do that. Fortunately, think about all the things that Donald Trump has done, and the one thread that goes through everything he's done, he's always fucked up. He's always failed. Spacer said, I think once Putin is gone, they can be free, and I think it will be the only way the war can end. Yeah, I agree. Putin's going to have to be gone. I was thinking about Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in that same car together. I was thinking, everybody said, that's weird. He shouldn't have done that. I looked at it as an opportunity for somebody, but nobody took him up on it. Yeah, you're right. That's what Putin is old now too. He's in his mid-70s. They say he's not in the best of health. Something needs to happen to him to get him out of office for anything to be normal, not only in Russia, but in the world. Russia's not as strong as they were back in the Cold War. They're much weaker. We found out how much weaker when we thought their ground forces were some of the most formidable in the world. And then when they went up against Ukraine, hoping to win that thing in 3 days, and they didn't, we realized Russia's not that strong. They don't have a lot of money. They're struggling financially. And here we are 3 going on 4 years later, and they're still fighting against this little country, Ukraine. There's a lot of talk about from Republicans. Why are we helping Ukraine? We should be keeping the money here. We have no business helping Ukraine. But people forget, back in the mid-90s, America and Russia committed and signed an agreement to protect Ukraine from just the kind of attack that Russia made on them. When the Soviet Union split up, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, Poland was part of the Soviet Union, I think. When they were splitting up and Ukraine went out on their own, here's what's interesting. There were a lot of Soviet nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And Russia and America said, well, that's pretty fucked up. We don't want to do that. So Russia and America sat down with Ukraine and said, listen, you got to give up those nuclear weapons. And if you do, we promise, meaning America and Russia, will protect you. We signed an agreement, and that's what we were supposed to do. They gave up the nuclear weapons. They were sent back into Russia. So what happens 30 years later? Russia attacks Ukraine, totally against the agreement that they signed 30 years previously. When Joe Biden's in office, they're helping Ukraine, just like we signed with Ukraine 30 years ago. Donald Trump comes in, his best girlfriend, Vladimir Putin, says, hey, don't help them anymore, and he decides not to. That's what I mean. You know, everybody wants Donald Trump to sign some kind of agreement here, an agreement there, a trade agreement. And the fact of the matter is, whether it be Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump, there's no point in signing agreements with them because they never follow through with it. They never uphold the agreement. You know, like the whole idea of a ceasefire with Ukraine. Why would you cut a deal with Vladimir Putin? You can't cut a deal with him because every time you do, he violates it. So there's really no hope in getting any peace based on Vladimir Putin. There's only one way to deal with Vladimir Putin, and that's with force, to push him back, to cripple the country, cripple the military. And there's one sure way you could do that, at least a good start to it. Donald Trump could do it in a blink of a fucking eye, help Ukraine and shut Russia down. Of course, he won't do that. But when Russia attacked Ukraine, the United States froze like $300 billion of Russian money. Just frozen. Can't have it. It's still frozen. Now, if you unfroze that money, handed that $300 billion to Ukraine and let them buy weapons, that would go a long way in Ukraine's fight against Russia. And that's the one way the war ends, if Ukraine just causes them to submit. They've already lost 1 million people in this war. Russia has. For fuck's sake. How hard is it to realize that you need to stop this shit? All right, Spacer says, this is because when Russia was starting and Catherine the Great was on her conquest, and with some intervention from the Mongols, many identities of Russia have been swallowed by Russian oppression, which is what we see now. Yeah. Well, I like history, but I'm not as well versed in history as you are, Spacer. But everything that happens in Russia is all based on history. I mean, they have a long history of, like you say, oppression or suppression. And you got to feel for the people in this country. They haven't known true freedom for a long, long time. And we can only hope that hopefully with a new administration and a new perspective that we can help Russia find that as well. Not only helping the people of Russia, but also helping the people that are constantly being threatened by Russia. China is possibly gearing up for an invasion of Taiwan. Trump says he will abandon them, but wait until he finds out where the majority of the semiconductors are made. Yeah. Do you think he'll realize that? Do you think he'll get that? I don't think so. Think about everything that's ever happened. And what's the one common thing with Donald Trump? He never does shit. We get COVID. He says it's a hoax. He doesn't do anything. 1 million people die. He said he was going to end the war with Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours with a phone call. Hasn't done jack shit. He meets with Vladimir Putin alone and then Zelensky alone with the EU and has gotten no closer to ending that war. Israel and Hamas. He was supposed to help end that war too, but the problem is he saw Gaza as a moneymaker for him, so now he sides with Benjamin Netanyahu and wants to clear out Gaza and send all these Palestinians to Sudan or someplace out in the fucking desert. All these people that didn't vote for Joe Biden because they thought he was a genocide Joe, you fucked up big. And I'm just saying, all you people that didn't vote for Joe Biden and voted for Donald Trump or didn't vote, the blood is on your hands. Rose says, I have a couple more for you. I'm a U.S. veteran fighting for additional benefits. It seems the administration has gone dark. I have not heard much about the administration lately since the big layoffs. Also, what about us possibly losing some of our Social Security benefits? Also, do you think Pete will bring back the draft since the DEI dismantling? Thank you again, Rose, Kyle, Texas. I don't think they're going to fuck with existing Social Security. That would be devastating not only to the people, but to the economy of this country. Can you imagine if people got their Social Security taken away and they couldn't pay their bills? Can you think of what kind of hit the economy would take? I don't think that will happen. I don't think they're going to bring back the draft. That wouldn't go well. There's nobody in this country that would want to send their kids into the military um, involuntarily. The draft didn't go well back in the 70s when I was young. People didn't like that. When they got rid of it, people loved that. We aren't in a war right now, so there's really no point in bringing back the draft. Personally, I think Pete Hegseth isn't probably long for this job. Um, and you said you're a U.S. veteran fighting for additional benefit. It seems the administration has gone dark. Yeah, that's the one area that is the most troubling. In spite of what they say, how they support our veterans, they have done an incredible disservice to the veterans. And they're pissed off about it, of course. And they should be, but all of us should be pissed off. If there's one group of people that we should continue to support, at the very least, it's our veterans. I don't know altogether what they've done with the VA and if they're costing people benefits, but it sounds like in your case, they are. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Donald Trump's not going to fix anything that's broken now. Not until Donald Trump is gone and the pressure is applied to Republicans while they're in power is anything going to change at this point. UJ says, read the book Defying Hitler, learn about how average Germans were manipulated. Well, you don't even need to read the book. You just need to take a look around at MAGA. I mean, the obvious is in front of them and they still buy into the bullshit. People are stupid. People are susceptible to cults. During the Canada elections, we had problems with Palestinian protesters not voting, probably the reason for the conservative gaining lots of seats. I think they don't know that Pierre Poilievre knows Benjamin Netanyahu, so that was a close call. And I know the liberal government is a little slow with aid for Palestine, but we are giving aid, and imagine what a conservative government would do. Well, that's it. And that's what they complain about with Biden. He's too slow. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. Remember, Joe Biden wasn't running that war. It was Benjamin Netanyahu, and it was the people from Hamas. Those of you that thought he was Genocide Joe was doing something that nobody noticed that Donald Trump is not doing now. What Joe Biden was doing was pulling the reins back on Benjamin Netanyahu. Wasn't letting him do the things he was going to do. He was going to cut off money. He was going to do something. But Joe Biden was holding him back. I said when Donald Trump became president, those reins would be taken off and Netanyahu could do whatever the fuck he wants. Guess what? That's what we've got here right now. Let's see. We protested the draft in the 60s and 70s. The old of us would gladly do it again. Yeah, absolutely. I was young in the 60s. I was in the single digits. I was born in 1960, so I was in my teens in the 70s. I was just too young to get drafted. The draft was over by the time I became old enough for the draft. I did have to register for the draft, though. That was highly unpopular. That war was unpopular, and a lot of people supported that war because you got to fight for America. But it was a fucking mess. It was a quagmire, and it was all about making money and not about the safety of this country. Spacer says, what do you think will happen to states like Texas and Florida? They need to be cleaned of MAGA and many others too. Well, right now, unfortunately, Florida is a beautiful state. I used to like going to Florida. Texas, also a beautiful state. A lot of tourism in both those places. But right now, Texas and Florida are shitholes. I mean, I heard somebody talking the other day, they want to move to Florida. Why the fuck would you want to move to Florida? First of all, you probably get a house pretty cheap down there because they can't sell them. That's the upside. But then you can't afford insurance. You can't get anything built. Taxes are going up. It's just it's a fucking mess. And Texas is probably worse than Florida at this point. So Florida and Texas have to go through a huge transition, and that's probably going to take a while. It may take several years to get Texas and Florida to come back because they're a fucking mess and they are going to suffer some severe problems. I mean, they have no they have no people working down there because of all the immigrants that blew town because they were afraid of being arrested and detained. So if you want to get any work done on a house or any other kinds of work, there's nobody to do it. I'm just wondering where all these dumbass white guys that said Mexicans were taking our jobs, why aren't they picking up those jobs? Why aren't they doing that shit? Pam says, I will not spend my money on Florida vacation. I will not either. I won't go there. I don't have any need to go there. There are plenty of other places to go that aren't quite as guilty of the demise of democracy as Florida and Texas are. The good news is Ron DeSantis is going to be out of Florida. He won't be the governor anymore. I don't know who they'll vote in. I hope he's better. I mean, let's be honest, he or she, whoever they vote as the new governor of Florida, certainly can't be any worse than DeSantis. I think Governor Abbott may be there for a while. I don't know what his term runs, but he is one of the worst of the worst. But it's going to be interesting when Donald Trump is out of the picture. What will they do? They've got this constant, they're sycophants of Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump no longer in power or doesn't exist anymore, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I bet they try to change their tune, but it won't be accepted very well. Vincent says, why the younger generations have to deal with the Cold War leftover bullshit. Well, that's true. Keep in mind, though, that there are a lot of young people that vote Republican. Why, I don't know. I mean, it comes to a point where we old people have to get out of the way and let the young people do what they do. Let them determine their destiny. But that doesn't mean they can't fuck it up. They could. And if they do, they're going to have to live with what they decide. Spacer says, I had to laugh in conjunction with another statement you made. Apparently, I don't know if this is true. Apparently, the governor of Wyoming is the most popular governor in the country. Yeah, because only 4 people live there. Yeah. You know, Wyoming's a fine state. My wife and I were there a while ago, and the reason we went there is because my wife said, I've never been to Wyoming. I'd like to see Wyoming. And I explained to her, I have been to Wyoming, and ain't much to see unless you go to some of the scenic areas out west. But there aren't very many people there. What they do, I mean, the governor may be popular because he's probably Republican, hardcore Republican, and Wyoming is a very red state. So I would guess he's popular or she's popular. But in the big scheme of things, doesn't fucking matter. Spacer says Buffalo there are beautiful from what I've seen in pictures. Yeah, I was in Wyoming for about 4 or 5 days. I never saw a buffalo, but I probably was more on the east side than the west side. Rose says, do you think that Trump's administration is preparing for his demise? I don't know if they're preparing for it, but I think they can possibly see that that is imminent. Maybe they are preparing for it. Maybe they're trying to figure some things out. But as long as Donald Trump's there, he's going to continue to fuck things up. So, yeah, they probably are preparing for it. They were probably preparing for it since January because they knew where this was headed. Incumbent Republican Governor Greg Abbott is running for re-election to an unprecedented 4th term in 2026. Not surprising. And unless the people of Texas realize how bad the Republicans have fucked them up, he'll probably get elected again. And honestly, at this point, I look at that and I say, well, you get what you deserve. I'd love to try to save you. I'd love to get you to see reason, but if you're unwilling to do it, well, then you can just sit there in your shit pile and wallow in it, and I'm not going to cry for you. I have no empathy for people who vote to put themselves in pain. Makes no fucking sense. Greg Abbott is a bitter man. Yeah, I don't know what he's like personally, but he's certainly a dipshit. He's certainly a criminal and not a good governor at that, especially with his redistricting. Yeah, that was a stupid move. That's probably not going to work well for him. And people are going to look at that as a bad choice in the future. All right, I'm going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast and this Substack Live. I want to thank all of you for joining me. Like I say, when I do these Substacks Lives, you showing up and you participating is the most important thing. So I appreciate you doing that. One last question. Do you think the Supreme Court will stop short of ending the Voting Rights Act because it may benefit Republican states, but that means the Democrats can do it too? The gloves will be off. God, I can't even say what the Supreme Court is going to do. I never thought they'd do as many fucked up things as they did. It's hard to say. I mean, we should be able to kind of get a sense of what the Supreme Court does as long as they stick with rule of law, but apparently that's not a thing anymore. We have a serious problem. We have a broken Supreme Court, a broken judicial system. We have a broken Congress. We have a broken presidency. Every aspect, every branch of our government is broken. All we can do is keep fighting and hopefully make some changes and get the right people in those places to at least start to repair it. Because keep in mind, if we get a new president and a Democratic Congress, it's not going to fix overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight. It's going to take a lot of time. The only thing I can hope for, we get on the right path and things start to get better slowly. All right. I'm going to wrap things up. I want to thank you all for joining me. As I said, thank you for participating. That is crucial for me doing this, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great night. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.